Have you ever felt a rush of motivation at the beginning of a new journey, only to watch it slowly fade away before you reach the finish line? One day you're full of energy, convinced that this time will be different. A few days later, that excitement disappears. Perhaps you once decided to learn a new skill, maybe a foreign language, coding, or drawing. The first week felt exciting. The second week felt harder. Then life got busy, and somehow you stopped. Or maybe you dreamed of becoming a writer. You bought a beautiful notebook, downloaded writing apps, imagined your name on a book cover, yet the pages remained blank. Some people don't just have one unfinished goal, they have many. Half written plans, half built dreams, half started projects scattered across their lives. And every time they think about them, a quiet sense of regret appears, like a reminder of promises made to themselves and never kept. If this feels familiar, you're not weak, you're human. And if your life feels like a collection of incomplete chapters, then this story was meant for you. Because long ago, there was someone who lived exactly this way. Someone who believed he lacked discipline, focus, and consistency. Until one unexpected moment revealed a truth that transformed everything he thought he knew. So stay with me, because what he discovered might change the way you see your own struggles. In a small, peaceful town tucked between rolling green hills and narrow dirt roads, there lived a young craftsman named Marcus. The town was quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and time seemed to move slowly. Marcus was 28 years old, skilled with his hands and admired by many for his natural talent. As a carpenter, Marcus could shape wood into almost anything. He had creativity, imagination, and technical skill. Yet despite his abilities, there was one problem that followed him everywhere. He rarely finished what he started. Half-built tables rested in his workshop. Unpolished chairs leaned against the wall. Ideas filled his mind, but very few ever became complete. Marcus often wondered why. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't untalented. And yet, no matter how strong his motivation was in the beginning, something always pulled him away before the work was done. Yet there was one flaw in Marcus that refused to leave him alone, no matter how hard he tried to ignore it. Day after day, it followed him like a shadow. He simply could not bring anything to completion. His workshop told the story better than words ever could. Everywhere you looked, there were signs of abandoned effort. A stool missing its final support leaned awkwardly against the wall. A dining table stood proudly on four legs, but its top was nowhere to be found. Wooden frames waited endlessly for doors that were never attached. The room felt less like a place of creation and more like a museum of good intentions that never became reality. Each unfinished piece carried a silent reminder of a moment when Marcus had been full of confidence, when he truly believed he would finish this one. From time to time, neighbors would stop by and ask about their orders. Marcus, one would say gently, pointing to a pile of wood, "Is the bookshelf almost done?" Marcus would force a polite smile, avoiding their eyes. "Very soon," he'd reply. "I just need to make a few adjustments first." But soon became a word without meaning. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and nothing ever reached the finish line. His father noticed, a man known throughout the village for his discipline and craftsmanship. He had once been Marcus's greatest teacher. When he visited the workshop, his eyes would slowly scan the scattered projects. He would let out a quiet sigh, not angry, just disappointed. "My son," he would say calmly, "a true craftsman is not judged by how many ideas he has or how many projects he begins. He is judged by what he completes." Marcus would lower his head and agree. He would promise again that things would change. And in that moment, he truly believed it. He would choose one project and swear to himself that this time he would see it through. "This one will be different," he thought. "This chair will be finished." But the pattern always returned. After a few days, a new idea would appear. Something more innovative, more exciting, more challenging. His attention would shift, and the nearly finished chair would be quietly pushed aside, left to collect dust like all the others before it. Shame slowly settled into Marcus's heart. He knew the cycle was destroying his confidence, yet he felt powerless to break it. Each night, when the village fell silent, Marcus lay awake in his bed, staring into the darkness. His mind replayed every unfinished project, every broken promise to himself. The weight of all those incomplete efforts pressed down on his chest, heavy and suffocating. like a stone he could not lift. And the worst part was knowing that tomorrow, unless something changed, the cycle would begin again. In the quiet hours of the night when the world was asleep and his thoughts grew loud, Marcus spoke softly into the darkness. His voice barely rose above a breath. "Why do I always fail at the end?" he asked himself. "Why can't I follow through like everyone else?" No answer came, only silence. Then, one clear morning at the start of spring, something unexpected happened. A visitor arrived at Marcus's workshop with an offer that could change everything. It was the mayor's daughter, known throughout the village for her refined taste and high expectations. She was preparing for her wedding and wanted a gift unlike any other, something meaningful, crafted by hand, something that would last a lifetime. She walked slowly through the workshop, her fingers brushing over unfinished wood, half-carved patterns, and abandoned designs. Instead of seeing failure, she saw potential. She turned to Marcus and said with confidence, "I don't need perfection today. I need vision, and I can see that you have it." She explained what she wanted: a wooden chest, entirely hand-carved, elegant, detailed, and one of a kind. A gift worthy of marking the beginning of a new life together. "I'm willing to pay generously," she added, "but I'll need it completed within 3 months." At that moment, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. His heart raced. This wasn't just another project. This was an opportunity to prove, not to others but to himself, that he was capable of finishing something important. Without hesitation, he agreed. From the very first day, Marcus poured himself into the work. He arrived at the workshop before sunrise and stayed long after the light faded. His hands moved with purpose. His mind was focused. The chest slowly emerged from raw timber into something remarkable. The wood he chose was flawless, strong, warm, and rich in color. The carvings grew more detailed with each passing day, telling silent stories through their curves and patterns. For once, Marcus did not jump from idea to idea. He stayed. Villagers who passed by would stop and stare. "This is different," they whispered. "Marcus," they said aloud, "this might be the finest work you've ever done." Each compliment fueled his determination. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe that this project would not end like the others. This chest would not be abandoned. This time, he would see it through. And for those first 2 weeks, everything seemed to confirm that belief. And then, almost without noticing, temptation returned. One afternoon, while taking a short break, Marcus flipped through an old woodworking book he had owned for years. Between its worn pages, a detailed illustration caught his eye. A delicate jewelry box, small yet elegant, filled with intricate patterns and clever joints. His heart skipped a beat. "It's tiny," he told himself with a confident smile. "I can finish it in no time. Just a quick diversion. Then I'll get right back to the chest." At first, it truly did seem harmless. A few sketches, a few cuts of wood. But soon, the small idea demanded more attention. The simple box grew more complex. Marcus began refining the design, adding details, imagining improvements. Before he realized it, the quick project had transformed into something much bigger. Then another idea appeared, and another after that. Each one felt urgent. Each one felt exciting, and each one pulled him further away from the chest waiting quietly in the corner. Days slipped into weeks. Weeks dissolved into months. Time moved so gently that Marcus barely felt it passing, until suddenly the deadline was no longer ahead of him. It was behind him. The morning of the wedding arrived. Marcus stood frozen at the entrance of his workshop, the air heavy with regret. From the distance, wedding bells rang clearly, their joyful sound cutting straight through his chest. He turned slowly and looked at the wooden chest. It was still incomplete. There was no lid, no lock. Half of the carvings remained rough and unfinished, like sentences left halfway spoken. The chest was not a gift. It was a reminder of everything Marcus had failed to do. Later that day, he learned the truth he already suspected. The mayor's daughter, left with no choice, had commissioned another carpenter to finish the gift. The decision was practical, necessary, and devastating. Marcus had lost more than a commission. He had lost the payment he desperately needed. He had lost the trust of the village, and with it, his reputation. But none of that hurt as deeply as what came next. As the workshop grew quiet, Marcus sank to the floor, his back against the wall. Around him stood the evidence of years of broken focus. Chairs missing legs, boxes without lids, tables never polished. Dozens of ideas, all started with hope, all abandoned before completion. For the first time, he didn't look away. And for the first time in his life, Marcus allowed himself to feel everything he had been avoiding. His shoulders trembled. Tears fell freely onto the dusty floor. It wasn't just about the lost job. It was the realization that he no longer trusted himself, and that realization broke him. It wasn't the failure itself that finally broke Marcus. It was the realization that he had been failing in the exact same way for years, repeating the same mistake, making the same promises, and ending at the same place every time. Different projects, different dreams, the same ending. He stared down at his hands, hands that were steady, capable, and gifted. Hands that could shape raw wood into something beautiful at the beginning, yet never carried that beauty to completion. A bitter smile crossed his face as he whispered to himself, "I'm exhausted. Exhausted from being the man who almost becomes something." That night, with his pride shattered and hope hanging by a thread, Marcus made a decision he had avoided for a long time. He left his workshop and walked toward the far edge of the village, where the houses thinned and the roads grew quiet. At the end of a narrow path stood a small, weathered workshop belonging to an old master carpenter named Samuel. Everyone knew Samuel. He was known for two things only: flawless work and very few words. People said his furniture lasted longer than generations, and that when he spoke, his words stayed with you for life. He did not teach apprentices. He did not advertise his skills. He simply worked and finished everything he began. Marcus stood at the door for a long moment, his hand trembling before he knocked. The door opened slowly. Samuel looked at him carefully. He didn't ask questions. He didn't comment on Marcus's tear-stained face or the exhaustion in his eyes. After a brief pause, he stepped aside and said only two words: "Come in." Inside, the workshop felt different from anything Marcus had ever known. It wasn't large, it wasn't fancy, but it was perfectly ordered. Every tool rested exactly where it belonged. The floor was spotless. Nothing was rushed. Nothing was wasted. At the center of the room stood a simple wooden stool. It wasn't decorated. It wasn't complex. Yet it was flawless, balanced, smooth, complete. It radiated quiet discipline. Marcus swallowed hard. "Master Samuel," he finally said, his voice unsteady, "I don't understand what's wrong with me. I have ideas. I have skill. I start strong, but I never finish. Never." He paused, ashamed. "How do you do it? How do you complete everything you begin, and do it so well?" Samuel did not reply. Instead, he reached for a small block of plain wood and a carving knife. He sat down slowly, as if time itself had slowed with him. His movements were calm, intentional, unhurried. Each cut was precise, no wasted motion, no hesitation. Minutes passed in complete silence. Marcus waited, his heart pounding, watching every movement of the blade. Then, without looking up, Samuel finally spoke. Samuel finally lifted his eyes and spoke calmly. "Marcus, look closely at this piece of wood." Marcus leaned forward and nodded. "There is an object hidden inside it," Samuel continued. "Not because we can see it yet, but because it can become something." He paused, then said, "Right now, what's inside this block is undefined. My task is not to invent it, but to patiently remove everything that doesn't belong." He shaved away a thin slice of wood. The sound was soft and steady. "If I stop here," Samuel said, holding it up, "this is nothing more than a wounded block. It serves no purpose. It has no meaning." Another careful cut, then another. "If I quit at this stage, it's still useless. Just wood that has been damaged without intention." He continued working slowly, his hands unwavering. Each movement was deliberate, no rush, no drama. "But if I continue," Samuel said, "layer after layer, without skipping steps, without searching for excitement, then eventually, something clear begins to appear." The shape slowly revealed itself. "And when I don't stop," he finished, "what emerges is something whole, something functional, something that exists because I refuse to abandon it halfway." Samuel turned and looked directly at Marcus. "Every meaningful pursuit passes through a dangerous place," he said. "At the start, everything feels alive. Ideas multiply. Energy is high. You feel capable of anything." He paused. "And at the end, there is satisfaction, results, pride, proof." Then his voice grew firmer. "But between those two moments lies the longest stretch, the middle." He raised the partially carved piece of wood. "This is where most people disappear. The middle," Samuel explained, "is uncomfortable. Progress feels slow, Doubt grows louder. The work becomes repetitive. The excitement fades, and suddenly new ideas look far more appealing than the one you already committed to. That's when people convince themselves they need inspiration, he said, or a better idea, or perfect timing. He shook his head slightly. The truth is simpler and harder. Samuel placed the knife down. Completion has nothing to do with motivation. Motivation is temporary, it comes and goes. He leaned closer. Finishing is about honoring a commitment long after the excitement has vanished. Marcus felt the words sink deep. It's about showing up when the work feels dull, when progress is invisible, when quitting feels justified. Samuel met his eyes. That is where craftsmen are separated from dreamers. The workshop fell silent again. But this time, Marcus felt something shift inside him. Samuel gently placed the partially shaped piece of wood into Marcus's palms. The gesture felt deliberate, almost ceremonial. For the next 30 days, Samuel said calmly, you are going to break your old pattern. Marcus listened without interrupting. Choose one task, Samuel continued. Only one. Not the most impressive, not the most ambitious. Pick the smallest, easiest piece waiting in your workshop. He paused. And then make a commitment, not to perfection, but to consistency. Samuel leaned forward, lowering his voice. Every single day, you will work on that one project, even if it's only for 10 minutes, especially on days when you don't feel inspired, especially when the work feels dull, and especially when a new idea tries to pull you away. He held Marcus's gaze. Finish one thing, Samuel said firmly, because a person who learns to complete one task has learned how to complete them all. That night, Marcus walked back through the village, holding the half-carved wood as if it carried weight far beyond its size. It felt less like an object and more like a reminder, a promise he had finally made to himself. When he entered his workshop, he stood still. Around him was the familiar chaos, projects begun with passion, then abandoned. For the first time, he didn't feel overwhelmed. He felt focused. After a long breath, Marcus made his choice. In the corner sat a small wooden stool he had started months ago. It was simple, ordinary. It needed only a few careful hours to be complete. This one, Marcus said out loud, this one will not be left behind. The next morning, before his thoughts could argue or delay, he picked up his tools and worked on the stool. 10 minutes. That was all. It wasn't thrilling. No one would praise it. There was no sudden burst of inspiration, but he showed up. The following day, he did it again. 10 minutes. Then the third day, 10 minutes. By the fifth day, temptation returned. A fresh idea appeared in his mind, a beautiful, complex design for a mirror frame. His fingers twitched, eager to begin something new. For a moment, the old habit whispered to him. Then he remembered Samuel's words. Marcus walked past the empty wood, past the exciting new possibility, and placed his hands on the unfinished stool. 10 minutes. And for the first time, he felt something quietly powerful taking root. Not motivation, but discipline. Some days, Marcus honored his promise for only 10 quiet minutes. Other days, once his hands were moving, time seemed to stretch, and 10 minutes turned into an hour without him noticing. The difference was simple but powerful. No matter what, he never broke the chain. Not once. By the 12th day, something subtle but undeniable began to change. The stool was no longer a vague idea. It was clearly approaching completion. Marcus could finally see the finish line. And with that vision came a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Not excitement, not novelty, pride. Not the pride of beginning something new, but the deeper pride of staying with it. Day 18 arrived, and Marcus carefully smoothed the final rough edges, his hands steady and patient. On day 21, he brushed on the last protective layer, watching the wood glow under the finish. And on the 23rd day, there was nothing left to add. The stool was done. Marcus placed it at the center of the workshop and slowly sat down. It didn't wobble. It didn't creak. It held him perfectly. The stool was modest and unremarkable, but it was complete, solid, real. In that moment, something inside Marcus gave way, not in despair, but in release. Years of self-doubt collapsed all at once, like water finally breaking through a wall. Tears filled his eyes again, but these were different. They carried relief, not shame. For the first time, Marcus understood the truth he had been missing all along. He wasn't flawed. He wasn't undisciplined. He wasn't incapable. He simply had never learned how to finish. With quiet confidence, Marcus selected his next task. Then another after that. Each time he followed the same rule: show up daily until the work was complete. No distractions, no chasing new ideas, no leaving things half done. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. Slowly, his workshop changed. The clutter of abandoned attempts vanished. In its place stood completed chairs, tables, and cabinets, each one a silent proof of consistency and commitment. Every finished piece strengthened Marcus's belief in himself. 6 months later, a familiar figure appeared at the door of the workshop. It was the mayor's daughter. She had heard the rumors. She had seen the results. And she had come to see for herself the man Marcus had become. "Do you think," she asked gently, "you could still build that wooden chest for us?" She paused, then smiled. "Not for the wedding this time, but for our anniversary." Marcus looked at her, calm and confident in a way he had never been before. A quiet smile appeared on his face. "Yes," he said, "and this time I will see it through." And he did. Months later, the chest stood complete, carefully carved, perfectly balanced, and finished with patience rather than urgency. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't abandoned. It was whole. And so was Marcus. But this story was never really about wood, tools, or furniture. It's about something much closer to home. It's about you. It's about me. It's about anyone who has ever felt inspired at the beginning of a journey, only to walk away before reaching the end. Here's the truth most people never hear. Finishing is not a gift you're born with. It's not talent. It's not luck. Finishing is a skill. And like any skill, it can be practiced, trained, and mastered. If there's one thing Marcus's journey teaches us, it's this. Remember these three principles. First, the hardest part is always the middle. When excitement fades and progress feels slow, that's not failure. That's proof you're walking the same path every successful person has walked. The middle isn't a warning sign, it's a checkpoint. Second, completion matters more than perfection. One small finished task has more power than 10 brilliant ideas that never leave your mind. Something done imperfectly will always beat something imagined perfectly. Third, show up every day, even briefly. 10 focused minutes, repeated daily, will outperform bursts of motivation every single time. Motivation is unreliable. Consistency is not. So if you're carrying unfinished dreams, don't ask yourself why you lack discipline. Ask yourself one simpler question. What is the one thing I can finish? Because the moment you finish one thing, you begin to trust yourself again. And once you trust yourself, there is very little you cannot complete. Start small, stay with it, and finish. That's where real change begins. So now, let me leave you with a simple but powerful invitation. Take a moment to look honestly at your own life. Notice the books you meant to finish but never did. The plans you once felt excited about but quietly walked away from. The goals that still live in the back of your mind, unfinished and unresolved. Don't judge yourself. Just observe. Then make one deliberate choice. Not the biggest dream, not the most impressive goal. Choose the smallest unfinished thing, the one that requires the least effort to complete. For the next 30 days, make yourself a promise. Every single day, you will return to that one task. You will give it your attention, even if only briefly. 10 minutes is enough. Some days it may feel effortless. Other days it may feel pointless. Do it anyway. No skipping, no waiting for motivation, no replacing it with something more exciting. Just show up. Daily. Until it's done. Because this challenge isn't really about the project you choose. It's about rebuilding trust with yourself. And once you prove just once that you can finish what you start, you change the story you tell yourself forever. Start small, stay consistent, and finish one thing. That's all it takes to begin.